Hi, it's Kimberly. This is a synopsis of Chapter 2 of the book Letters from Christopher, Tragic Confessions of the Watts Family Murders. Chapter 2 is entitled Christopher's Early Years. The book is by Sherilyn Cadle. The author starts off this chapter by giving a brief history of Chris Watts, his birth stats, where he grew up in North Carolina, and bits about his family. We all know his family: father Ronnie, mother Cindy, and his sister Jamie. Jamie is 7 years older than Chris. Took a year and a half before they owned Chris. And of course, I'm kidding about that, but it did take that long, a year and a half, to pay off the hospital bill, as apparently they did not have what Cadle called maternity insurance. I wonder if that's why there were no more kids after him. They couldn't afford it. But we hear about the family, the home life, and what a good boy Christopher was. He and his father seemed to like many of the same things. They'd spend a lot of time together and not talk together. Chris was also close with his grandmother. She's described as negative and controlling of Cindy. But this stuff did not affect Christopher, she says. He was a socially awkward teenager. He didn't get into typical teenage trouble or drink, do drugs, none of that sort of thing. Cadle says that Christopher was afraid of God and put him in a box. And I'm not sure who's in the box, if it's God or Christopher. I don't understand that, and she doesn't explain it really. But Chris apparently took his religious teachings very seriously. He made, darn sure he didn't sin, because he didn't want to go to hell. He had the belief that if he died while he was sinning, that he would go directly to hell. And according to Cindy, Chris would repent in the bathroom over and over and over, just kind of OCD like repenting. And Chris said he regrets not having ever asked Shanann what her beliefs were and her views on religion and God. It just wasn't in their marriage at all. And Chris, of course, as we all know, went to NASCAR Tech after high school. He got a good job. He was living the dream. And he continued to be a good boy, worked hard, saved money, met Shanann, and got married, all in this chapter. The beginning of this chapter talks about Chris growing up, but she only glazes over that part and the meeting and courtship of Shanann, their marriage. I do hope she delves further into it, at least his childhood, later in the book, since it wasn't covered very much, in my opinion, in this chapter. I think his childhood would explain a lot. That's why I want her to go deeper into it. My guess is that Cindy kind of smothered him. Mrs. Cadle called it doting, that she doted on Chris. And the word control is actually used at one point to describe her relationship with Chris, that she controlled him. And I feel like he was probably caught in the middle of his mother and grandmother. They both have very strong personalities, so I can only imagine what that was like. Chris doesn't like it when people say or think negative things about him, or if they judge him. He's always put on this good guy persona. He's always been very helpful and, do stuff so people like him and say nice things about him. So I'm thinking that when we describe him as a murderer or a family annihilator or a narcissist or psycho, it bothers him and makes him upset. To me, she doesn't discuss Chris's formative years enough. This chapter was supposed to be about the early years, yet it's only mentioned briefly. Then she goes on to talk about other things, and she even misspells Dieter's name. She goes on about social media, about how people became obsessed with the case, the pictures and videos that Shanann took presenting a happy and perfect family, and how the Watts and the Rusicks have been treated brutally and harassed by the media and by people with mental issues, and it disrupts their time to mourn. She goes on to say that Chris may have partially blocked in his mind exactly what happened the day of the murders. In fact, that was mentioned in the last chapter as well. And what does that mean that he may have? To me, that's huge. How does she arrive at this conclusion? To me, that could almost be a chapter within itself. The author mentions that Shanann had a large presence on both Facebook and YouTube. I didn't know she was on YouTube. I'm gonna check that out, but if it's there and I've missed it, I find that hard to believe because I'm pretty sure I've searched all of YouTube. So, and of course she mentions that Shanann was very social and Chris was not. And then Cato said something very interesting about Shanann's use of Facebook. She said, and I quote, "Obviously, there are many things that Shanann posted that were very different from the way it truly was." End quote. And I'm thinking, like, what? I want examples of what she's talking about the things that she posted that were very different from the way it truly was. That's just a big statement to me. And I'm not trying to be mean, but this chapter was all over the place. Since it was titled Christopher's Early Years, I thought that would be the only thing discussed. But we went from birth to NASCAR to getting married to church to social media to controlling personalities to everyone being harassed. And to me, meanwhile, there is Christopher standing quietly in the corner with tears of penitence, being a model prisoner, hoping that everyone likes him. So, I'll end the video here and I'll pick up with chapter 3 in the next video. Thanks for listening.